Hello, and welcome to another season of Storied Arcs podcast. I am your host, Mike.
And I'm your host, Alex.
And this time we are going through Kill or Be Killed by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. You have already heard all about them, the setup for the book, and other details about their careers in our Zero episode, so we're going to dive straight in on this one. Now, I have the unique opportunity thus far in the podcast of not having read beyond what we are covering.
Yeah.
So the spoiler ban that we have for others also applies to me, so Alex will get immediate feedback if he tries to spoil anything.
Yeah,
beyond this trait.
Yeah,
but we will assume you've read this trait.
I will do my best because I have read this book all the way through. I read it when it first came out. As I mentioned last episode, Brubaker and Phillip are my favorite comic team working today. If they announce any project, I will pre-order it as soon as it hits previews to make sure I get it. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's if it's a new single issue kind of comic or what they're doing currently with these graphic novel sized books. Doesn't matter if their names are on it. I'm going to buy it. So I read this when it first came out back in 2016, and I'm very excited to jump into it and talk about it now with Mike, especially since Mike is reading it for the first time, which I think is pretty cool.
I love this opportunity. I have them all downloaded on my tablet. I'm still trying to acquire physical copies because I prefer reading physical books. So I just got this X library trade for $3, and I'm very happy.
That's always great.
So trying to do the rest, but it's been very hard to restrain myself because I was like, I want to see what it's like to podcast one without knowing where it's going, because I've had this limited omnipotence about all the subject material so far. So this is me sitting in your situation, just swinging away. So what grabbed me immediately is we get, just great writing, as we would expect. Very vivid, quick, rip the Band-Aid off, this is who this guy is. And I think I'm just going to read, these are the yellow caption narration things. This is probably, my pages aren't numbered. And I think, like we covered, the art goes beyond the page, really. So it's intrusive to put page numbers. It's probably page 4 or 5. And it starts in the top left panel where he says, "The fact is there is no justice. Bad people get away with everything, and greed is destroying the entire planet. We all know this is true, but we refuse to really let ourselves believe it. We cling to fantasy, to hope. We say stuff like the arc of time is long, but it bends towards justice, when it so clearly does not. It bends towards fascism and mass graves. But we sit at our screens and fill our heads with noise and scream at each other as if that's going to change anything. I get it. I used to be like that too. But now my life is different, obviously." So the first things that I wrote down here were, 1, getting some Punisher vibes. Mm-hmm. 2, getting some Fight Club vibes.
Yes.
Some Tyler Durden speech about how all modern people are too passive, too easily mollified, too easily entertained, and distracted from the problems of their life in the world. Would be the Tyler Durden of it. The Punisher vibe of it
is the killing of people.
Is the killing of people in the seemingly easy justification of, like, I know evil when I see it, and I'm going to end it. And the great news is you can be a fan of Kill or Be Killed, and the imagery from this has not been co-opted by the alt-right for any reason.
Yes.
As opposed to Punisher. So,
yeah.
Not that I would stop someone from reading a Punisher comic, but,
and again, they're those people that have co-opted the Punisher
don't get it. Yeah.
Have obviously never read the Punisher. But yeah, no, there is, the book is, it's their take on kind of the vigilante, the mass vigilante myth that so propagates fiction, American fiction. I mean, specifically comic books.
Right.
But even going all the way back, whether we're talking about, Zorro or something like that.
Yes.
The Lone Ranger, whoever it is.
Certainly Westerns, right?
The idea of the man working outside the law because the law and everything else is corrupt. Because I'm the one person that knows what's good, and those people are almost always cast as heroes. And that was kind of what the Punisher was kind of pushing against. But at the same time, the Punisher has been around so long, he's gone back and forth between like
right.
the actual hero
and anti-hero
and all that stuff. And I think this is kind of, specifically Ed Brubaker has worked so much in mainstream Big Two comics. He's written all the big vigilantes, Batman, Daredevil. He's internalized all the ideas of the myth of the mass vigilante. And he's putting it into a really grounded, I hate using that kind of grounded real world setting, but that's what it is. It's they're putting it really street level. This is a regular dude who is, at least in his mind, believes that he is forced to go out and kill people. He's got to find a way to do this.
Well, that and then once forced, can easily rationalize it.
Yeah.
And to me, I guess this is probably comforting to listeners. I do not agree with him.
Yeah.
In terms of his assessment of the world. And he says, we say this thing, the arc of time is long, bends towards justice, clearly riffing on Martin Luther King Jr.'s, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. saying that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends toward justice, which is a sentiment, an idea that I really identify with and agree with, find central to my understanding of my worldview. For him to take it here and just be like, but we know that's not true. He's not even trying to argue about it. He's just saying, like, look, he's a matter of fact, plain spoken in his defense of himself.
Well, yeah. And I will also not defend his actions, but at the same time, I'm closer to believing his worldview. That, like, I'm far more pessimistic about the world.
Well, I certainly think when this came out in 2016, it was not hard to rally around this.
And the issue 1 was published in August, so again, written 5-6 months earlier, so would have been written earlier in the year in 2016. Again, we're in that same time period.
As Paper Girls,
when it started, and so the a lot of the things that they're talking about in terms of the state of the world were on the precipice in early 2016 when this was being written,
right? And
6 years later, like, a lot of it's only gotten worse. Like, a lot of it has come true, and things haven't gotten better. And so I think it's a story that if the world keeps trending, and by the world, we are specifically talking about where we live in the United States of America, but in general, the world hasn't gotten a whole lot better as a whole. But if it keeps trending the way it is, I think this is a book that's going to become, I think, more and more relevant, not for the fact that there's a guy who believes he's haunted by a demon and has to kill people. But this
idea of the systems don't work.
Yes.
We have to short circuit the system, which is what, to me, that's politically what populism is.
Yes.
It's like, I don't care about understanding policies and issues and data and science. We're just going to get someone who can, speaks from the gut, speaks from the heart or whatever, and can be a cathartic thing.
We, the collective we know what's right, we know what's wrong, and we can make that judge. If we let it go to the overriding systems and policymakers,
or trust the existing power structure and work within it.
They're just going to screw it up because we all know that's all bias, that's all a bunch of crap. So that worldview, it's what our characters, it's what Dylan is using to justify the fact that he is going after, again, he's going after what he believes are bad people. And his justification is, well, listen.
In his very first encounter, which we get in this book, completely validates. He shut down a whole sex traffic ring by getting vengeance for his friend Teddy.
But it's something to think about, though. Again, in terms of all the narration, all the boxes you just read there, it's all narration that comes from Dylan. He's talking to the reader. He knows there's an audience there because we start the comic in media res, and at some point he's like, oh wait, my bad, like, you're just seeing me kill these people and you don't know how we got here. So he jumps back in time, so he understands there's a conversation happening between the reader and Dylan as he's narrating the story.
And he understands that these things are not objectively fine.
Which
is why he's getting defensive and saying, well, let me, you have to understand.
Exactly. He knows the reader is judging him, but because he's the only perspective that we get, we are relying on his remembrance of this childhood memory. This idea that he as a kid, he has this memory of Teddy, and then years later, he's like, oh, wait a minute.
Something really bad was happening.
So something bad was happening. It clicks years later when he's in high school. So it's probably like 10 years later. Right. After they're kind of no longer friends, it hits him like, oh, wait a minute, wow, yeah, no, his brother must have been molesting him, and then so he now confirmed that's now confirmed in his head, even though he has no actual evidence of that. There's just the memory there. But like we say, after he goes and he's convinced himself that I got to kill this guy because he molested his brother and got away with it. After he goes and just kills this guy in cold blood, the investigation into that does lead to the exposure of this child sex ring, and they bring the whole thing down. And so, first time out, his first venture into this, his vigilante ways, he's proven, well, yeah, this is a good thing. Look what I did here, Right. And on top of that, I think, Dylan's, as we talk about, he's a character that suffers from fairly severe mental illness. He's a depressed character. He has suffered. He's dealt with it his whole life. His father was that way as well. We learned that his father took his own life.
Right.
Dylan attempted to take his own life in college with pills, and this story starts with him trying to take his life again. And the fact that he doesn't die and that he's saved, this demon appears and says, "I saved you, and because I spared your life, you now got to work for me." And so,
which is the other. That's the other Fight Club analogy to me. Is once he's doing this, he starts becoming himself.
Yes, and he starts feeling better.
Right, Ed Norton comes in all bruised up to work. Yeah. But he's got this swagger about him.
He feels more alive, and Dylan, I think, physically, obviously, he knows he suffers from some level of kind of serious depression, but he also he's better in life now. So is that because this demon is letting him live? Is there a demon at all? Is it just, what is the book trying to say about
I think he has
and murder and killing and how it affects a person? And I think in this first, it's presented here as effectively positive because he's killing bad people,
Right.
So it starts off that way.
I mean, he kills Teddy's brother,
yeah,
which, if nothing else, is a net gain of his life over Teddy's brother's life.
Yeah.
Then he does the calculus of the net gain of the child sex ring.
Yeah.
And all of it, and it's
definitely
like
a positive then, yeah.
Right, and it's like, oh, well, that's easy. And it's like, first of all, yes, on the surface, the calculus is very easy. Yeah. And then, the sex ring, you still see how far he is from the efficiency at the beginning of the book.
Yeah.
At the end of this book, he's accidentally shooting a stripper in the chest.
Yeah.
Because he's just a mess. Yeah. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
And so we realize, like, oh, we're nowhere near the end of this.
Yeah. He's still working through it, but you then kind of think of then in terms of, again, how it's presented as you just get lucky in that first one,
right?
Or is this what his,
or can you manufacture this result? Yeah.
Is this what his calling is? Is this what he's supposed to be doing? Because I think there's so many, especially in when we talk about vigilantes in comic books, Batman, Punisher, Daredevil, all these guys, they're on a mission. They're called to do this.
Right.
Something happens to them that puts them on a path where they are, monomaniacal. Like, this is what I'm going to do. This is my mission. I sworn this oath. I got to do that. Dylan's just a dude. He's just a guy. He's a guy. He's a 28-year-old grad student, just trying to make his way through. And he is in a position where, again, he feels like he has to do this because whether it's real or not, he believes this demon is coming, and if he doesn't kill someone every month, the demon's going to kill him. He's going to end his life.
Although I think, I had initial skepticism about the reality of the demon, and so does Dylan.
Yeah.
Reasonable doubt. And the demon, physically abuses him, and it's a little more compelling. Like, I'm glad that he just didn't blindly accept oh, there's a demon telling me to kill someone.
But the demon does physically abuse him, but then Brad Pitt also punches Edward Norton.
Right.
But it's not because he's punching himself. Sorry, spoilers for Fight Club if you haven't read the book or watched
Spoiler
the movie.
ban is lifted for anything from the 20th century.
I think so. Yeah. But also, when we get to the end of the trade here, the reader sees, because the demon is in Dylan's father's art. He sees that exact same picture there. So then you wonder, Is it something he internalized?
Right.
Or did the demon visit his father? Was his father
thing? Yeah.
Was his father haunted by this?
Well,
as well?
And his father clearly attempted suicide before.
Yeah.
And if that wasn't his first try,
and did kill? Yeah, he did kill himself.
Yeah.
But did he draw that because he saw the demon, or did he make the demon up and draw it?
And now it's haunting his son.
Is it it's a chicken or egg thing? So I think you're meant to question the validity of it from a reader standpoint, because ultimately,
I certainly question his logic.
Yeah.
I've questioned his sanity. However, there's no denying that you are rooting for Dylan, right? And I think that's the masterful stroke of writing. It's like, I read your thing in the beginning, and I do understand that people are there.
Mm-hmm.
I understand even going there in terms of your rationalization, your slipping, your pessimism, whatever. I'm not there, but I understand how he got there, and I'm rooting for him, even though I don't agree with what he's doing.
You, the reader, are meant to question how real this is or isn't. But again, ultimately, it doesn't matter because Dylan has come to believe that it's real. So you are watching his journey, and you're seeing how it affects him. And one thing that will be explored, the only spoiler for going online, is you will see how it starts to affect people around him, because this first trade it's all set up. These first 4 issues are all about how Dylan gets into the mindset of, okay, this is a situation that I'm in, this is how I'm dealing with it, how I'm moving forward with it. As we go through the story, you'll start seeing how that weight and carrying that secret of being this vigilante, of being this murderer, how that starts to kind of permeate out and affect the other people around him. So you start seeing more of the collateral damage.
Although you see him at the end of this voluntarily sever the relationship with Kira.
Yeah, well, because he starts to see the thing that again permeates all Masked Hero myths. If I'm going to do this, that puts a target on me, and maybe I'm okay with that. Maybe I've accepted that, but it then puts everyone around me in danger. If people are going to be hunting me, they're going to be hunting everyone that I associate with. So he's trying to do all that. Again, that's part of the myth of the vigilante, is that I'm sacrificing my personal relationships. I'm doing this great thing I'm protecting you by killing these people, but also I'm distancing myself from you.
Yeah.
I need to remove myself from humanity, from society, because I'm this great martyr. That's what they tell themselves, and that's.
I mean, people have confronted Bruce Wayne on that for decades. You don't have to be that recluse.
When you really break down someone like Batman's mission, like Batman is someone who suffers from severe mental illness that's just undiagnosed, and at this point he just lives with it. But there is an inherent flaw in all of these, in this vigilante belief, and I think that's what they're exploring here with Dylan. It's this regular guy who is now thrust into this role of being, I got to be the savior here, or I can be a savior, not the big one, but he feels like I can do this.
Yeah, like a lowercase s savior.
Yeah. That yes, I got to do this thing because apparently this demon's going to kill me if I don't do it every month. But if I'm going to do this, I might as well do it in a way where the world, quote unquote, gets better. Well,
and in one where he can sleep at night.
Yeah,
He sleeps like a baby after he does this
exactly.
stuff.
He can justify it, and he sees his experience of life is getting better. He feels better physically. I think he's, even though he's going out late at night or whatnot, but he's still, his quality of life has improved since he started murdering people for the demon. So, again, I don't think the book is meant to glorify that. I think it's meant to present it that this is the first step. That if someone were to go out and do this, that
this is where they start.
It would seem very much like this is a good thing. It's a net positive.
Net positive. Yes. Yeah. So the other thing that I have a couple other vibe checks. So it's clearly right up my alley because it's reminding me of all sorts of things. I already said Punisher and Fight Club. The other one is the manga series Death Note, one of the most famous manga series probably of all time. Big anime series, a very botched Netflix movie adaptation. and now a forthcoming Netflix TV series adaptation by the Duffer Brothers.
That's right. That's coming up, isn't it?
So big influential work. Now, the premise of that is this high school student, so younger than Dylan, who's 28, high school senior, 18 years old, finds a death note, which is a notebook where you can write anyone's name in the world and they will just die of a heart attack in 40 seconds, or you can specify their time of death and cause of death, which he eventually manipulates and starts controlling how they will die for minutes or hours or days before they die, and really works this thing in the way that no one in the history of the world has done. And his name is Light, but once people realize this is happening, people are dropping dead, they give him the nickname Kira, which is killer in Japanese, which is Dylan's female friend here. And as soon as he starts using the notebook, he is visited by a Shinigami, which is a god of death, who is, a big black cloaked figure who hangs around him all the time and spurs him on. And I was like, this is, because when I told my wife, I was reading this in bed, and she was like, what's it about? And I was like, this guy, he's attempts suicide, visited by a demon. Demon tells him he has to kill one person a month in order to stay alive. And she said, that sounds like a manga plot. And I was like, it really does, except I don't know if there's actually a demon. That's the big to it. Because in a manga, it's like you wouldn't even hesitate. It's like, that's basic. Get your manga off the ground and rolling. Yeah. Introduce some supernatural element of some kind, and we're just going to kind of take it for granted. Mm-hmm. Whereas Brubaker and Phillips, even when they use supernatural elements, there is a grounded storytelling.
Very much, yeah.
And grounded is different to me than gritty. Because I think some people would say something like Zack Snyder is very grounded. I'm like, well, it's really gritty. It's dark and it's gritty, but it's not.
Nolan's Batman is grounded and gritty.
Batman Begins is grounded and gritty.
And gritty. It's both. Yeah.
There's nothing in that first movie where you really have to pause your belief system and be like, a really rich guy, if so motivated and adequately mentally broken, could do these things. Could take a tank from the army and drive around on rooftops and do this stuff. It's like, and I think that's the vibe I get here.
Yeah.
It's not gritty for the sake of being gritty. I think you would look like a fool. If you tell this story in a way that isn't both grounded and gritty, it's Deadpool, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It slips into comedy because this can only be really serious or really funny.
Yeah, because the narration, the narration of Dylan wouldn't work,
right?
As a storytelling technique, if it weren't grounded, if it weren't quote unquote real, as it were. That's the important thing here, because again, by doing it that way, again, you question, and by showing kind of the things that Dylan struggles with, you question whether this demon is actually a demon. Is a demon just a metaphor? Is it that literal? Like the demon is his mental illness? Is it a manifestation of the things that he's dealing with? Is it simply an illustration of the darkness that maybe exists in all people,
right?
Or is it an actual demon? We don't actually know.
Well, and this is the interesting thing. So Kira, his best friend, means killer in death, which fits killer be killed. However, if you go beyond the Japanese to the origins in Hindi or Sanskrit, or even in Hebrew, the name Kira means beam of light. So is it was this his one ray of light that will pull him out of the darkness, or is this? And she even has an identity crisis here between two paths, where she's like, version of me that I am, version of me that I want to be, and here are the two guys that represent those directions. So to me, I still don't know what her role is. I'm like, first of all, the relationship stuff. Her being his best friend, getting together with this idiot guy.
His roommate,
great story on its own. Without any of the other elements, that would have been a really subtle, short indie comic strip on its own. For that being the backdrop with Mason kind of being, a dim-witted jerk who like thinks they're friends.
Yeah. He's pretty dull. Just
Dylan being, I think not. He's not like a Rhodes Scholar.
No.
He's a grad student. He's got some letters, got some paper on the wall, but he's not like a genius. He's not going to be, Edward Nygma
again.
Or Thomas or Bruce Wayne.
He's a regular dude trying to get by, and I think that's the thing about these characters is that we get a little bit of Kira's backstory with her mother and multiple husbands and all that. Maybe a little screwed up there, but you know what? Regular person though. Just a regular person. Dylan, he's the son of a kind of a cultishly famous artist, didn't have massive privilege, isn't like super rich or whatnot, but there are people who know his father's work and are fans of it. But like, again, just a regular dude, trying to go through college, had some hard times because, he's struggling with his mental health. And it's why he's still in grad school at 28. Because he lost a lot of those years trying to get some help and try to figure his way through the world.
Shots fired. I started grad school at 27.
Oh yeah, but
I also had mental health issues.
Yeah, see, it's
relatable.
It's tough. It's tough there. But the point is that he's a dude just trying to get. These are people just trying to get by, trying to live their life, trying to figure it out. And really Mason is no different than that. It just Mason is just kind of a dim bulb. But
right.
But there's nothing. I guess one is there is nothing meant to be exceptional or special about these people. No one here is chosen,
right?
Aside
from possibly being chosen by the demon, but it's like self-selected by suicide attempt. That could be generational and probably not even real.
But that's part of Dylan's justification of
I'm special.
If I'm doing this, that because I saw this demon, he then starts to believe it. But in general, he is not picked because he is special.
Right.
None of
he's not the chosen one.
None of these.
There's none of that narrative.
But he can talk himself into that because he's doing this work for this demon because he believes this demon is real. He talks himself into, and the demon, and that the demon saved me to do this, and so I gotta.
And clearly, at the beginning of this book, when we are in the future or the present with him. He sees himself as a quasi-messianic character.
Yeah. Well, and
it's like, man, I got this figured out. I'm really good at it, and I'm saving a lot of lives.
The narration you read there was him being like, that reads as someone who says, "This is the world is screwed up, and I can fix it.
And I'm the only one brave enough to fix it.
I can do it. The rest of you, I'm calling the rest of you out. I used to be like you too, ignoring all this stuff, but I'm doing something about it because I." Am special because I'm doing this because I'm acting and you're not. And he definitely believes that. But that's only that's him retconning his past there because we see where he starts, and again, just a dude, just a guy struggling to get through life. Nothing special about him, and I think that's key for the kind of books that Brubaker and Phillips have done recently, that none of their characters are meant to be anyone extraordinary. There's regular people put in extraordinary circumstances. Whether of their own making or own belief or not, that's where the story comes from. They're regular dudes, and Dylan falls into that, and his friends do too. So they said the potential love triangle stuff there is just interesting on its own, but that's just a backdrop for everything else that Dylan is trying to deal with.
Final vibe check, by the way. At the end of the last issue, he buys a red hood and becomes an outlaw vigilante with a red hood. So Red Hood vibes, which is a comic character that I love more than I should. Like, I don't know if he's had enough great story arcs to really be like a favorite comic character. But I do love Jason Todd. So
we differ on that one. I think as far as I'm concerned, Jason Todd should still be dead. So
I don't think I can argue with that in light of having him.
I'm
I do think the Arkham night game really skewed me in favor of loving Jason Todd.
Okay.
And you're not a gamer.
No, yeah.
So I don't know if you go through like some people and just watch the YouTube of all the story.
No.
Okay.
No.
Probably not worth it. But that's a great, great Red Hood story.
I'm just not a Red Hood fan, but I do think that does bring up an interesting point about the use of color here that Elizabeth Breitweiser uses. A lot of it's very muted. A lot of it's very dark. There are moments when Dylan's it gets a little psychedelic as he's wondering what's real and what's not. When the demon comes in,
right.
It gets very weird. The art style gets different. But yeah, there's a muted nature to it. And then we have this like really bright Red Hood, this red ski mask, that really pops off the page. And I think that's intentional. I think part of it also is that it's set in wintertime. It's late in the year, so there's a lot of grays and snows on the ground. But there is so much mood and atmosphere that I think the color palette they use here for this book that it really sets up and defines a place for you. I think you really feel the environment.
Yeah.
And the mood that you're supposed to get. There's a little unease there. There's this kind of tension under the surface that things aren't quite as, nothing's really kind of happy and free and kind of good to go. Everything is real moody. Everything's real.
I can also say when you're in a deep depression, like many people will tell you, like the feeling is just everything is gray. There's very little that's vivid or exciting or can snap you out of it.
When someone's sad, you're blue.
Yes, yes,
That's not unintentional.
Things are they're just muted and dark, and it does capture that well. I had flipped to this panel since we're talking about his duality here. This is like the third to last page. In one box there, his future narration is saying, "So I lie, I fake a breakdown." And in the past that we're living through, he says, "I'm sorry, okay, I've been self-destructive." It's like the fact that he thinks he's lying when he says he's being self-destructive is like it's such clever writing. Mm-hmm. It's so good, and it's such a good way to wrap this story arc of like, here's where he is. He is now lying to the people around him, or at least thinks he is. Yeah.
Well, he's saying he's getting into bar fights.
Right, yeah. So he is lying.
Yeah.
I don't think he's lying about being self-destructive.
No.
Since his face comes home battered every single night.
Yeah.
But he thinks, like, I'm so noble, now I'm lying to them to protect them.
Exactly. So
yes.
That feeds into the vigilante myth.
There's some narcissism,
There is the self-sacrifice. I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this to protect you.
Right.
And and it's look how noble I am that I can go out and do these things, and I'm protecting you by hiding you from the truth because it's better for you because I know what's better for you. You're right. It's a total narcissistic move, which in a lot of ways being a mass vigilante is. That's like a big ego move, the fact that I can go save things because I know what's right and wrong. You guys don't. That's kind of a big galaxy brain move for a narcissist.
The next thing that I wanted to point out is, despite his narcissism and his now growing sense of superiority to the average person, he's still very dedicated to justice. After his first kill, he's tentative about it. Pretty sure that dude's evil. I don't know how I feel about killing him. Kills him. Realize totally justified, totally vindicated, at least in his mind.
He keeps checking though. He keeps checking for news.
Obsessively.
He's worried, am I getting caught or whatever? And it's like no news. And then it's like, oh wait, investigation into this led to this child sex ring. And I think at that point, it lets him off the hook for that first one. Like, oh well, yeah, totally, I did the right thing.
So then he goes to select his next target, and he's like, none of my other friends were molested as children. Yeah. This can be harder.
I'm on options now. Now what I do. Yeah.
And now I got to do research. And he's not just researching to like how to find a criminal. He's going in deep. He's looking for books, teach you things like good anti-crime, how to detect to spot criminals in a crowd. It's simply, people that are present. They're not checked out or looking at their phones or thinking about something else, just kind of in a haze. And he has this page where he says, mostly though, he's talking about Washington Park. The people you notice are just selling drugs, and how racist would it be for some vigilante shooting up dealers in Washington Park, and what would change? Nothing. He's just taking a moral high ground over like Ronald Reagan and the war on drugs, right? It's like drugs that's not real crime.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's so good that he wants to cut crime off at the source, and like, you can shoot drug dealers all the live long day, and that's not going to reduce crime.
Well, but there's also I think,
and they're just a cog in the big American machine. No one is forcing anyone to buy drugs. We're all doing them because something is wrong with this place, and drugs are the easiest escape. But he's actually found a better escape for himself, and he's not going to judge people trying to escape reality.
You'll get a little bit more later on, but they only hint at it here, and this isn't really a spoiler here, but like, how does he get a gun the first time through?
Oh, but no, I've got a whole I do want to talk about that.
He gets it from his dealer, like a guy who deals drugs out of a
tries,
out of
right?
a van. Well, but he goes there to try to get a gun, and the guy's like, "What? Just because I deal drugs, I don't get a gun?"
It's like, I don't want to get shot.
Yeah, I'm like, exactly, yeah. But the idea is that, like, when it comes to drug use or whatnot, like Dylan does, he takes something, whether it's because the guy in the van there, I think his name is Rex. He talks about like, it's okay, so he calls it his prescription,
yes,
his regular pickup. So Dylan's not out here judging people for that, and the awareness of being like, if I just go and shoot the brown people in the park dealing drugs, like, what does that do? That doesn't do anything,
right?
That's so. There's an awareness of that, and also an understanding that like he's part of that cycle as well. But that he still is trying to have a code. He if he's going to do this.
He's got a code, and I think he wants the same reward that he got the first time.
Yes,
which is
looking for the big payoff that
it's obviously not delivered here. Obviously, that's going to have diminishing return. Everything like that has diminishing return, which means it requires escalation.
Yes.
Meaning this is going to get out of hand so quickly. Mm-hmm. We'll start to understand how this book opens with him, going through a whole building of people with like a sawed-off shotgun, just like mowing people down, not having conversation with them, not telling them, what you did wrong. This is my city. Something like, it's like, nope, you're just dying. That's what it is. You're dead now. I do like, and I think that's what makes it not a superhero book. The fact that he doesn't need to have a conversation with any of his guys. It's like, I'm Teddy's friend.
Yeah,
bam. It's like, nope.
It's just I'm made up my mind. I'm going to do it. And I think there's you quoted the scene from Washington Park when he's talking about where he
doesn't want to kill drug dealers.
Where his line is, a little before that, there's one of these pages, these like 2/3 splash pages with all the text just on the outside. Yeah, that page right there. I don't know where we are. Where she's
holding the bag of laundry or groceries.
He's walking in the snow, and he's talking about it's so easy for guys in those old vigilante movies to find their targets. They're just walking around waiting to get mugged, or they listen for screams and arrive just in time. In real life, it's not like that. So even Dylan is aware of the tropes of the mass vigilante myth. He's talking about how he'd rely on like the police blotter, the police radio, or whatnot. But then he even does talk to about like you can't trust the police or whatnot because they're the ones committing the crimes.
Right.
and there's even an awareness of that. He says, I'm not going to follow cops around waiting for them to start shooting people for being black. I don't even have a car, for one thing. And it's not like the racist cops advertise themselves. They don't wear Klan sheets to work. So even then, he's talking about how more of his justification is understanding of his view of the world and how he's going to go about it, that it's not just not trusting the justice system at the end, that these people are not being convicted or put away or punished, that even at the source, they're not even being arrested. The wrong people the people he's going after aren't even being looked at by the cops.
Right.
That they're not the ones that, so he can't rely on them. He can't be following them around to try and fulfill his mission, as it were, that he sees as his mission. That, he's putting these, not restrictions, but he's putting these rules in place for himself because he thinks of himself on a higher plane.
Oh yeah.
And he's talking himself into that he is that he's of a different ilk, of a different sort. Because if I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to do it the right way, quote unquote. Whatever that right way is.
Right. Well, that, and if you do feel like so I think the relatable thing is, if you were told you absolutely must kill. First of all, if you really wanted to be the selfless person, you would just choose not to kill, and you would just
die. Yes.
Right. So you can only think of yourself as so selfless.
Yeah. In this case,
there is something inherently selfish about
wanting to live.
His desire, to keep living at the expense of other people's lives.
Yeah.
There is like the little bit of contradiction in there, which reinforces the idea that he's not entirely stable, even though he's functional.
Mm-hmm.
But when he does get a gun, I thought this was just, again, another masterstroke in the economy of storytelling. He goes to his mom's house to get his dad's old gun, which was kept in a magazine collection that he used to go through as a kid.
It's his dad's artwork. Yeah.
Right, it's his dad's artwork. And as he was going through that, looking for the gun, he's called back to the memory of going through that as a kid with his friend Teddy.
Which leads to his first kill.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, this didn't need to be two separate storylines. Yeah. They're all linked. And I think it's just great economy. It could have been twice as many pages, one to get the gun, two to get the target. Getting them in one swoop is good storytelling, and it shows how frustrating his next one is. The first one fell into his lap.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's his second try to get a gun, which in America, I've been given the impression it's not very difficult to get a gun.
Yeah.
There are many loopholes, places to get them, things like that. I don't own any. Don't have any desire to. But anyway, it takes him 2 tries to get a gun, and in that second try, he also gets his target, which makes the second target that much harder.
Yeah. Well, it gives him a false sense of like, this is going to be pretty easy,
Yeah.
And then exactly. And then the second one, not only it's not just harder, like it's super hard, like it
goes
it's a struggle.
Horribly.
Yeah, and it goes completely wrong. So he kind of gets put in his place very quickly. That this whole vigilante thing, said it's not like it is in the movies. He said, as he's talking about, it's not what it's built up to be in fiction. Because again, he's aware of the same stories that we the reader are. Maybe the exact same ones, but the same idea, the same trope,
right?
The same hero in fiction, or the same figure in fiction that's always the hero.
Yeah.
He thinks of himself in that way, and he finds out very quickly that maybe it's not, a little more work than that. It's harder than that. It's not like it is in the stories, in the movies, and the TV shows.
Right. You can't be just standing on a rooftop listening to the whole city alerts, or Peter Parker with your police scanner.
Yeah. You can't
and get there instantaneously.
Yeah. And it's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to be right. And he came to that conclusion after the first one was so easy and the second one wasn't. And
and he doesn't own a car.
Yeah,
which severely limits his targets.
Lives in New York, so he's taking public transit around.
I would not want to be a serial killer using public transit.
It'd be tough.
And then again, the stuff with Kira is just woven tactfully throughout the whole thing. Mm-hmm. He seems to always be checking himself against her. Sees her as like a stabilizing presence, even though she doesn't seem super stable.
Well, and I think that's something they point out, that Dylan points out, is that part of the reason maybe they became friends and are as close as they are because they're both pretty broken people.
Right.
And that's kind of how they found each other. But yeah, he definitely views. He seems like someone who's kind of unable to see himself, to judge himself, and so he's
not honest with himself.
He has to see himself through other people, and for him, it's specifically Kira. How
Right.
she sees him is reflective of how he sees himself. So early on in the story, when he's very depressed, very by himself, Kira's dating Mason, and so he's basically lost his friend to his roommate. She's not there to see him. That's a point when he's at his lowest.
Right.
That's the point when he decides to try and take his life again. And then as she then starts migrating towards him, kind of not again, maybe for the first time, at least romantically, his vision of himself, his idea of himself starts to improve some. His attitude starts to improve. And that kind of coalesces with him having the demon and starting to kill people. So he's trying to juggle these two things. But his view of himself, how he views himself, is very much dependent on how he sees Kira viewing him, how Kira's interaction with him, them together, how she sees him, how he treats him. It's very much reliant on that. He's dependent on that because he's not honest with himself.
But also he does better with Kira when he's riding the buzz of doing the killing well.
Yes, yeah.
And
because he's more himself,
right.
I think. Cause,
he's more confident in himself.
Yes, yeah.
Outwardly. Mm-hmm. And it shows.
I think it goes hand in hand with Kira being closer to him now. That fuels. I think it's both those kind of working together.
Yes.
I
think
in
his mind, the ultimate would be him doing this killing and him having Kira.
Yeah.
He would
on
be
a parallel track together.
Yes. He would be his full self, although her never knowing about.
Without them cross pollinating. Yes,
right.
That'd be that's the hero myth, the vigilante myth. You keep them separate.
Yes, and he decides to give that up at the end of this, but this book ends with someone saying we need to talk, and it's actually unclear to me who was speaking there.
That was Kira.
Yeah,
I believe so.
I was like 60% sure.
Let me double check that
because the last text bubble is on a page by itself, but it's a continuation of the previous bubble, and you can't see who's saying that either. Takes one to know one. Okay, you're right you got that right, I guess. Has to be Kira.
I think so.
It's her turn to talk.
I think, because it's back and forth.
Listen, we need to talk.
Yeah, I read that as Kira, yeah. And again, so that last image there of the demon in Dylan's father's artwork there, again, that's just for the audience. That's for us to see.
Right.
Well, obviously, Kira sees it. She puts that that issue down, but she obviously doesn't know that's what Dylan's seeing. So Dylan hasn't seen that yet. He's not aware of that yet. But yeah, there is that is Kira wanting to talk to Dylan, presumably about going forward, how they're going to be around each other and what's going to happen, and confronting Dylan a little bit about the fact that, as far as she knows, he's going out at night and getting into bar fights because that's what he's doing.
Which is like sadly still better than what he's doing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. She's willing to intervene on something that's a much lesser stake than what he is doing.
Also, I think it says something that like he says that, and no one's like, "That's ridiculous. What are you talking about?" They're all like, "All right, that kind of makes sense. That seems like something you would do."
Yeah.
Like no one's, like when he's saying being self-destructive, getting into bar fights, like neither Kira or Mason seem shocked by this.
I know. When he says, "Yeah, I'm self-destructive," it's the easiest thing in the world to believe, and he's like, "Ha, fooled him."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they're it's not like they were anticipating that, but they're not shocked by it. They're like, okay, yes, you are someone who is prone to self-destructive behavior.
Right.
We know this about you, and you've chosen to manifest that by getting in bar fights. Okay, that doesn't seem crazy to us. So they're instantly in on that, and so I think that's Dylan knows that, which is why I think that's why he says that, why he plays into that, why the lie is so specific. Even though he's not he thinks he's lying about being self-destructive, but the lie is only the actual act, the specific act of getting into bar fights. He's lying to himself about the self-destructive part, as you mentioned before. But he knows that's how they're going to react. He knows that will placate them. So it's like he's playing off of their understanding of him, because there are no secrets here, that everyone knows that, you know, he has mental health issues, that he is depressed, that he's taking something for his mental health, you know. So yeah, he's playing on that and preying on that, and kind of getting the results he wants. But yeah, it's him again, manipulating the people around him, manipulating the story, manipulating his environment for it to eventually work out for him. And I think that's effectively how you end this first arc. Yeah, that second kill doesn't go very well, but he learns something from it, and he's, you know, trying to get better from it. But I think the idea that he hasn't been caught yet, you know, no one's beating down his door, you know, he's with Kira, you know, things generally are, he's in a better place than when we saw him real time at the beginning of the story. Not the prologue where he jumps in to meet Reyes. Yeah, where he's in a better place now. So it's, although I don't think the book is meant to glorify it. I think it's very clear that, like, all this is super tenuous. But for this first arc, though, you are with Dylan. Again, you think you're right when you say you are rooting for him. You want to see him come through the other side of whatever he's going through. You are compelled to be on his side, even if you are, like, you know, repulsed of the idea of just going out and killing people in cold blood. That's never a good thing. Right.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, I don't have any more notes on it other than, like, I'm willing to talk about this all day long, because I did love this. My limited exposure to Brubaker and Phillips in the past was, one, I had the impression that all of their stuff was crazy long and goes on forever, just because I'm thinking, like, it seems like I see a lot of criminal books. There's a lot of reckless books.
Well, criminal is very long and ongoing. That's what it was. One of their few ongoings. You know, I mean, this went. You know, this goes 20 issues, which is on the deeper side for them. The Fade Out was 15. You know, so
Fade Out felt like a long 15. I mean, I don't know why, but that one was a much longer read than Kill or Be Killed.
I think
but I think it was a big ensemble, and I think what I like about this,
there's more characters, there's more conversations, more dialogue. This obviously is a lot of narration, because effectively there are three characters.
Yes, and that's what I like.
Yeah, I love, and one of them is Mason, who really doesn't.
We never follow Mason.
Yeah.
And we rarely follow Kira without Dylan being there. We follow our protagonist. Yeah. It's Dylan. And what I was hoping is that, you know, it would bum me out if Volume 2 proceeds down the vigilante typecast, and, like, he makes friends with a reporter who feeds him inside scoops on drug, and he, like, befriends a cop who, like, secretly approves of what he's doing, and he, like, starts to build this, and then we have to watch a whole side issue on the journalist front and a whole side issue on the cop front. Like, that to me would feel like, okay, you had something that was very original, and you're just treading familiar ground.
Yeah, and
you're smiling, so I assume they're not doing all of that.
You don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
Yeah, they're again, they know what the tropes are. They know what the tropes are, and say Dylan knows what those tropes are.
That's true. So, that was a meta awareness.
Yeah, he's aware of what he's doing in terms of, like, how it is depicted in the things that he would have read, those kind of stories. So yeah, they're not falling into those traps. It's not a book about vigilantism. It is commenting on that, on the idea of what it was, what it would
realistically look like.
It's closest to what it would actually be if someone were to try to do this. If someone
doing it without malice, not just a serial killer who enjoys killing.
Yes,
someone who feels forced to kill and chooses to try to do good. Given the hand they're dealt.
And what would happen if someone starts looking at that and being like, well, we have all these unsolved murders, but, like, all of them are bad dudes. Like, there's no pattern, like a serial killer pattern, other than like,
right.
that guy's kind of a bad person, that guy's a bad person, that guy's a bad person. Like, what would that do to the investigation? What would that do in terms of how the public would react, how the police would react, how all of that would react? How would society react to that kind of thing in quote-unquote real life versus how you can imagine that would happen in something more explicitly a comic book? And I think the thing that they're going to explore, and the thing that I can tease going forward, is that when wondering about how the story would treat something, you think about it in the most grounded way possible. Like, how would police today react to something like this? Not how would a comic book world,
right?
Or, what's the most realistic way, and maybe which also may be the most, like, what's the most pessimistic way? What's the most cynical answer to this question? It's probably the answer you're going to get, because that's how they keep this book grounded. They're looking at what they think actually would happen.
Right. And we're not getting half of the pages dedicated to the cops' investigation of it.
Yeah.
We're in the dark about that, just like Dylan is.
Yes. Yeah.
Dylan has to assume, they've got pictures on a board, and red string trying to tie things together across the room. Like,
but all we see is him on his computer, on his phone. Just,
right.
Are there any updates?
Which is like, that's the suspense of it, is we feel what he feels. And I feel so many books, shows, movies feel the need to show you like what's happening on the other side. Yeah. And it's like, why are you doing that? You're just robbing the suspense. Yeah. Like, we know people investigate murders. Yeah. We don't need to see someone investigating it to trust that it's happening.
Well, and I think that's important in the first volume, to stay with Dylan there.
Yeah.
The world starts to expand. You're going to start seeing that, and you're going to start seeing, because again, this is all about him accepting his position, his fate. This is what I got.
But also, he's narrating all of this.
Exactly, he is. Yeah, and so as the story moves forward, you're going to start seeing what those consequences are. These are consequences that you never see in a Batman story or a Daredevil story or something like that, or a Punisher story. You're going to start seeing how these choices and his decision to be this vigilante who goes out and kills people in cold blood, how that starts affecting him, the people around him, and the world, and everything else. The world will expand. You will start seeing some of that, and the reactions of these people, again, they're going to be things that I don't think we've seen in comics. If you read a lot of superhero comics, they're going to be the reactions you don't see, the kind of reactions you maybe as you're watching the story be like, that's not what the cops would do. They're going to do the thing that you think they're going to do in probably the most cynical way possible. If you, like Dylan, believe that ultimately the people in charge, the justice system, are not on the eventual side of good. That all things are corrupt, all things are maybe these systems are kind of inherently bad and biased. You're going to see how that starts to affect his world and what the larger consequences are going forward. So I think for this first arc, though, it's important to stay with Dylan and understand his mindset and get to the place where he has accepted this is what I have to do now. He accepts the demon is real. We don't actually know if it is. It doesn't matter because he now believes it. Because again, when he first shows up, he rejects it immediately. Like, this is ridiculous, And it's only until he gets to the end of that month and he starts feeling like he's going to die. He's getting sicker. He's physically weaker. And again, is he actually that way? Is it psychosomatic? We don't know, and it doesn't matter as long as he believes it. So at the end of this first volume, he is now in. Even though he screwed up that second kill, he is now in. He believes this is what I got to do. He's all in. He understands that he's accepted his mission. And so now we've gotten to that point, we'll see the outside world and we'll see Dylan's view on it as it starts to come in and as it starts to react, as he starts to do this longer and longer. So that's kind of the next step in the story that we'll get to. So I can't wait for you to get there. Yeah,
I'm excited. Do you have anything else or a bookmark? Something you returned to, something that reminded you like, this is why I picked the book. This is why I love Brubaker.
One thing that I think stands out, it's early in the first issue. Again, they are not numbered.
I mean, the first 5 pages.
Yeah.
If they put that as a preview in the back of any other book, this thing would sell like hotcakes.
I think they did.
They probably did.
I think those. I mean, I think that narration.
To me, it looks like the type of thing that would be in the back of another book, where it's like, here's a 5-page preview, and a 5-page preview of this would just.
Now that you're saying that, I'm thinking it might have been. They might have put that preview somewhere. That opening pages that might have been the preview. I'll have to go back and check and see.
Well,
where
since
that
we
was.
record the 0 episode last, we will perhaps retcon and put that information in the 0.
But early on, I think that the page I really like is, I think it's on, maybe it's page 12 or 13. I think it's 13. There's a scene of Mason, Kira, and Dylan. They're sitting on the couch.
That's there's
so
it's one continuous picture with
it's one picture and Kira and Mason are on one side of the couch and Dylan's on the other, and the narration is there. Kira still came to our place all the time, but almost never to hang out with me. And that caption is over Mason and Kira, and then over by Dylan it says, and that made me feel even lonelier than I usually did. So even just by the way it's drawn, that the two of them are on one side and him on the other, it shows a separation between them. But Sean Phillips puts a panel right around Dylan, which is not just so it's not just his isolation from them. It really it's like it highlights his isolation from the world, that he's all by himself.
Yeah,
that it's not just the physical space between them of being on different sides of the couch, that they put him in his own box, and stuff like that. I think is so cool. Whenever they sneak something like that in and do something fun with the paneling, just to accentuate an idea, however subconscious it is to the reader. So I really love that one little panel, that one little part of the page.
That's genius. Yeah. That to me is how you, as the artist, tell a story and are elaborating on what the script is. Mm-hmm. I would be very surprised if the script had... It's one large panel, but there's like a continued panel from the 3 above. It's like that type of layout. You have to trust the artist, and they have that relationship.
They do, and I think that's one of those things that I wouldn't be surprised either way. Like it's possible that could be in the script where that was meant to be separate panels, like completely separate panels, and then Sean Phillips decided to make it one panel and isolate it out. Or it could have been meant to be one panel, and so I could see it go either way in the script. But the idea that I know Brubaker and Phillips are at a point where like there was an unspoken understanding that I think on some level, I think Brubaker knows when he writes a page, when he writes a page of the script, I think he has some idea probably of what Sean is going to do because they've worked so well together. I'm sure he has a way to...
The higher the trust, probably the less instruction, more describing like, this is the story, this is the vibe, and just I trust you with the
here's
vibe.
The dialogue, here's the text. I think there's an incredible amount of trust there when they work as much as they have together and work so well together. It shows in the final product.
Yeah. So anyway, and it's for my bookmark. I think it's probably those first 5 pages, especially the one I read from earlier, just because I think I'm all about. I love sinking into a long story, but I still care about economy and storytelling. I don't like rambling. I don't like having this secret and hiding it for 20 issues. I love that they come out and tell you, like, this is what you're dealing with. It's a future narrator getting ready to tell us about the past. We know where this character ends and immediately jump into where the character was. And you can even speculate on the trajectory that led to that. And then as things unfold, it makes sense. I'm eager. It's one of those things where I really want to see what the ending is, but I'm not going to let myself spoil it.
That's good.
So
Be
I'm
disciplined.
just going to do it. So we'll meet you back here next week for Volume 2 of Kill or Be Killed. I have no idea what's going to happen, so I'm really looking forward to seeing it with you.
Sounds great. Remember, it is issues 5 through 10.
5 through 10.
Yes, it's 5 through 10. They broke these up a little weird.
4-6-4-6.
Yeah, it's 4-6-4-6. Yeah, it's 20 issues, but not 5-5-5-5. So it's 4-6-4-6. So issues 5 through 10, Volume 2. be back here next week.